This is Dr. Elliot Realsteen, and I have a PhD in biology, music, and most importantly, a PhD in street. Marriage. It seems that most want to do it, but what is the real meaning of it? After all, if you think about the numerous steps encompassed in this process, from picking out and buying an engagement ring, to planning the proposal, to the proposal itself, to having a bridal shower, to the hours upon hours of preparation for the wedding itself, to the gift opening, to the honeymoon, and everything else in between I may have missed, the costs of a wedding, not just financial but personal, are immense. But this begs the question, why do people put so much time and money into an endeavor which, for many, is actually completely meaningless in its current form? Now, please do not misinterpret my words. I am not saying that the act of marriage or getting married is meaningless. I am merely saying that the process in which most people go about getting married has little to no meaning. Most contemporary marriages in the Western world are simply two people entering into a contract with the state, and the marriage ceremony itself is, on average, a $35,000 celebration of this contract. Most marriages in the modern time take place at golf courses, or a hotel, or a barn, or in a field, and are overseen by a justice of the peace. Now, for those unaware, a justice of the peace is a state representative who has the authority to administer a wedding. Now, justice of the peaces are not special or distinct people. In fact, they are typically people who work 9-to-5 jobs as accountants or teachers or whatever, and they do the justice of the peace gig in order to pocket some extra cash on the side. Getting married by Tom the accountant in a field for a coveted government contract is not a reason for celebration. It's not a reason for uniting with a partner, and it is certainly not a reason to unload $40,000 in celebration. A contract with the government should not be venerated. It should be met always with skepticism. To elucidate this in a succinct and thorough manner, civil weddings are a gigantic waste of time and money. If a couple decides to get married, the only manner that is palatable for a street doctor like myself is if it operates under a religious banner. If a wedding takes place in a church or synagogue or mosque or temple in a religious ceremony, then the actual act of marriage is warranted. Although celebrating this act for tens of thousands of dollars is not necessarily warranted under any occasion, but that's a topic for another day. If two people happen to be of faith and they view the act of marriage as joining them together in union under this faith and giving themselves to each other to a higher power, which is overseen by a representative of their religion, only then can you argue that the union has a modicum of meaning. A union which is a simple transaction for a state contract from James the plumber does not. If a couple decides to get married in solely a civil manner, then a symbolic marriage in front of friends and family with an exchange of rings and vows with no government supervision at all is equally as meaningful as one which is overseen by a justice of the peace who is there for the sole purpose of recording your marriage transaction and then taking these records back to the state for filing and documentation. Maybe more meaningful. Now, I know there are probably dissenting voices who are crying out, saying,
Yes, civil weddings do have value. They are a meaningful change in your life in terms of your tax status and who receives custody if the couple has children and one of the parties happens to unexpectedly die.
Now, I hear you, but that brings me to my next point. Civil weddings are nothing more than state worship and serve the sole purpose of creating the aura of the all-powerful, all-knowing, omnipotent government that oversees us, the peons. Many use the justification of tax status and the custody of children in the event of a spouse passing as the reason to lock themselves into a state contract known as marriage in a civil ceremony. But let me ask you this. Why is government in the business of determining where your children end up if one of the parents dies anyway? Who bequeathed them this unbelievable power? Why are we allowing people who are married to be taxed differently than people who are not married? Aren't we all equal under the eyes of the law? And most and fundamentally, who decided that the government and the state were in the business of overseeing marriage and the union of two people in the first place? Now, the specific answers to these questions are not important, but the fundamental philosophic questions are. The state has been given near godlike powers to oversee and control even the most important aspects of our personal lives. Marriages for the sole reason of attaining a state contract and the belief that only the possession of this contract solidifies a union between two people only feeds fuel to the power source that is government. And with this power, the state turns around and puts forth real-world consequences such as tax rearrangement and child displacement. And we only have ourselves to blame for this. I am in no ways anti-marriage or advocating against it, but what I do believe is that marriage should not be defined by the state. And if we were smarter as a civilization, it should have never been allowed into the conversation in the first place. We could have avoided a lot of social and political headaches and upheaval if we had done the pragmatic thing and ensured right from the start that there was a separation between marriage and state. Marriage should be a sacred union, however you define sacred as a couple between you and your partner. A government official being required to oversee and document this union dilutes the meaning of the moment and kind of looks tacky and stupid if we're being honest with ourselves. The state has no business defining what a union is or isn't, and it only has the power to do so because it barged into the equation basically uninvited. It's time to stop government wedding state worship and take back the control of our own lives.